hopefully the rain does not stop us from beginning this Jess's interview show.
This is official.
Sort of. I mean, in a really unofficial sort of way. All right, are you ready for this?
I'm ready. I don't know what you're gonna ask
So
me.
everybody that I've like sat down and interviewed for this format of video, I have not given them any like preface of like what we're gonna talk about, because a lot of times, I don't know, we're just sort of flying by the seat of our pants here. We've actually done podcasts before for our course that we did. We had 6 podcast episodes are part of that course. So we've kind of done this format.
We're kind of used to on the fly.
Yeah. So welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. My name is Jess. This is my dear friend Jill. Jill also has a YouTube channel. It's called Whispering Willow Farm. I will put a link to that down below. And Jill is buying this farm.
Yes.
And we'll be moving into this farm in less than 2 months. So we're really coming down to it. So today I asked her to be on my interview show. After I've been doing these interviews, y'all have been asking a lot of questions, and I wanted us to just be able to kind of share more about that, and you be able to share more about that. So this interview show will probably be both of us talking some. 2 months, T-minus 2 months. I guess let's go straight for that before we go more into the backstory. That's really broad. I just want to be like, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're moving into this farm. This is going to be your garden. This is going to be your pavilion.
I know. It is wild. It was so funny because I shot a vlog earlier and I was mentioning how you asked me this weekend we were here if I'd like envisioned how I was going to lay out the house. And like in some ways I have. But like when I dream at night and I think about moving, it's this. Like what am I going to put in the high tunnel? When I walk through this garden, like what's going to stay the same? What's going to, you know, like change? And so this right here is what I think about when I think about moving. Like the house for me is kind of totally separated from that. And I know that's kind of weird because like I love your house.
I don't think so. Not for gardeners.
Okay. But like for me, I'm like the dahlias. Like, oh, those dahlias. Like, the dahlias are staying, you know what I mean? And so it's like trying to think of how I'm going to step into that high tunnel and be able to grow throughout the fall and the winter. Like that's a whole new season for me. And so when I lay in bed at night and I think about moving, this is all I think about.
I am really excited to see what you guys do. One of the things that I think is really cool about what we've done here, we've kind of shared this a little bit, but we really felt that shift in our heart at the end of 2018, and we really felt led at that point. And it was one of those like things where you just know and you're knower. And a lot of people are like, how did you know where you were supposed to move? When you know and you're knower and you really feel like the leading to go to a certain place and do a certain thing, that was the end of 2018 for us. We knew exactly where in South Carolina we wanted to be. We knew what we wanted to do. It was impossible at the time, and we came back here, and actually the next thing we did on this farm was build the window greenhouse and plant the perennial garden. And it's just such a backwards thing to do. It's like, hey, we're gonna leave here and like plant something, and it was always this idea of, well, we have to be legacy minded about it. I had no clue at that point that it would be, oh gosh, we are gonna cry today. I can feel it. I just felt it. There it was. God. I should have known. But like I had no clue at that point that it would be you. And it's funny now, you know, these things kind of tie together over time, but like I think of you talking about really wanting to build a window greenhouse and then deciding not to because it really wasn't, you know, feasible with your goal. But it was a desire of your heart. And it's just funny now to have built this saying, no, this is going to be important for the next person. And like I knew you then, and we were friends, but I just didn't know.
No, I think that is crazy too. And whenever we announced our move, so many people had commented because they'd seen me do videos in Jess's greenhouse, and that was the desire of my heart before, like saying, you know what, God, I know this isn't a right now thing, but I know you have this for me. And I've
like,
had
literally, actually,
I've had people come back and send me videos and be like, you need to watch this. And this is before we ever even knew. And it was just like the faithfulness and the promise of that has just been, it's been a lot to wrap my head around. Like just the faithfulness of this season has been wild to me. Like things, I went back and reread prayer journals and like specific things that I've asked God for, coming over here and like helping you do things too. Like not even knowing that I was sowing into what was going to be my own.
I know. Gosh, it's so good.
It's crazy.
It's so good. So what I really want is for my viewers that follow you here to understand fully, this is the best case scenario for me.
Yeah.
And like you're talking about so often coming over, and I mean Jill has helped us so much, I mean over the years, like coming, and I remember being really overwhelmed. I guess it was last summer, and just so much going on. I was writing the book. That's what it was. I was coming down to the book deadline. And like Nathan and Jill came over and spent a whole day like pruning and tying up tomatoes. And, you know, like really helping us just for the sake of helping us as friends. And it is, you know, now you look back and go, wow, I was investing in what eventually I would have. And I think that is such a cool story. But for me, I did all of these things knowing, like building the greenhouse, and we didn't really hold anything back. Like we made it lovely. We made it like we would want to have it. Yeah. And planting the perennials and doing all that stuff. And so for me, not only a very close friend having the farm, but also the fact that you do YouTube is really cool. Because I feel, for me, what we've built here with viewers watching and the relationships and the friendships being made, I also feel like I'm able to that they get to still have it. They get to still have something here. And I'm almost hesitant to say that because I don't ever want to put pressure on anybody. I think you like doing YouTube is why I say that confidently.
No, I do, and I think it is, you know, that's something that we try to express to our viewers. We get asked a lot, what are you going to change? What are you going to stay the same? I think Nathan and I appreciate all the work you guys have put into stewarding this, that like we want to respect that, while also adding in things that are true to us. And like one thing we shared recently on a blog is one of our dreams for this space is Nana and Malia drew and painted that beautiful mural, and like that's really important to you guys, and like we would like to really do something beautiful with that. And we would love to build an outdoor kitchen and have farm to table dinners, and like that's a way that we could take something you've stewarded and invested in and make it special and unique to us as well. And I think that that's our goal, is we're not going to come in and redo everything. That's not the desires of our hearts, because you've done so many things well. It's coming in, stewarding what you've started, and adding our own personal touches along the way.
And we've talked, you know, in depth. We've walked around the property so many times and kind of like brainstormed together, and like they've shared their ideas, and Sean's come and done some consulting, and like just all these ideas together. And I just know that it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be so good. And I just cannot imagine a way that this could have worked out better as far as, you know, our enjoyment and the peace of our mind to be like, wow, this really mattered. Everything we built really mattered. So I want to know, what are you most excited about as far as like the garden goes? And when you think of the next season of gardening for you, what excites you the most?
I am excited to have the space to grow food, to try new food. Like I've never been able to put something in my garden that I wasn't, you know, didn't have intentions to sell it. Or that served a purpose. There is so much space here. Like I can dry food, like I can grow food just to see if I like a new variety. And if I don't, that's okay. And a big vision of mine and Nathan's is to be able to donate a lot of this food. This is more food than we could possibly need. So that's going to be really cool to grow all this food, have the platform to teach you guys, and then bless my community, directly impact my community in a very positive way. Nathan and I are excited to walk into that. And so there's just so much space. I can grow whatever I want to grow.
You really can.
I know, and like I'm just like, I like that.
You know, whenever we had this garden up here in the front, we just had the raised beds, and everybody's like, oh, that's so much space. And it was, but like only to a certain degree. And I mean, we still got to grow a ton of things. This is a huge garden. But when we expanded into the back and started building the in-ground stuff and the high tunnel is when we really reached a level of food sustainability that hadn't been possible before. Because you basically, like, it's kind of like a backwards mullet. There's like business in the back and the parties in the front. Like, that's what this property is. Like, because like I've got a year's worth of potatoes and onions and garlic and all of the basic things. You could put corn in, you could put row stuff in, and like really knock out the commodities. But yeah, there's room to experiment.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're not giving up the food in your pantry to look at something and go, I'm just going to leave that because I want to see it happen.
Right. And obviously, too, like, that's a big deal, is being able to double, triple, you know, on those things like garlic, onions, potatoes that we've been kind of put in just one small bed. We didn't have a lot of extra space. And knowing that we've got all that to be more than enough to our family and then give some, and I know that that's one of the things Nathan's really excited about too. He's got all these visions for animals, but you know, he is excited about just the amount of food we can grow and donate as well.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. How is this gardening year for you?
Like at my house?
Yeah, like what you've got going on at your house, and then we were supposed to do silage tarps and do some planting and stuff today. The weather didn't cooperate, but we're kind of starting, really transitioning. I know you've already been planting here some, but what's this like for you? It's to be in such a place of limbo, right in the middle of the gardening year.
So for me, it's kind of crazy because I feel like my art is already here. So in a way, I had these great, like, I wanted to go out with a bang, right? Like at my property, I wanted to do and maximize every square inch of my garden. But there's such a disconnect from my garden because my heart is so already here. I think, well, what could I do here that's gonna just like get me one step further when we move? And that's so weird. I told Nathan today that I have spent less time in the garden this year than I ever have. Yeah. And we have other projects going on, but I partially feel like that's because my heart is already disconnected from that place and it's already here, that I just want to be here.
Well, you know, I took the whole go out with a bang approach too and want to plant the whole garden. I have the great benefit of knowing who I'm giving it to.
Right.
I can sow anything and know that I'm giving it to someone who's going to anticipate it and harvest it. So I can understand that entirely.
It's been interesting.
Yeah.
It's been interesting.
But what a great sense of anticipation too.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yes, I mean, knowing what I'm walking into, like, this makes me just have such a peace about the move too. Yeah. You know, and so thank you for doing thank you for going out with a bang.
It's a little wild. I mean, you're getting a little bit of wilderness here, but it's like a loved wilderness.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It's so pretty. It's like I don't mind a little wild.
It's funny because this whole season, like, as the garden has done really awesome stuff, like there's these dahlias that are blooming in the cottage garden, which Jill loved these dahlias in this bed so much last year. That I actually bought more this spring and put them in for her to have, that they'd be blooming when she was moving in. And this one just bloomed. It's like a dinner plate. It's this big. It's gorgeous. And I'm always sending her pictures. Look at what your dahlias are doing. So excited.
They're so pretty. Yeah, we will definitely keep all the little surprise flowers in the garden. That's one of my favorite things. Is you can be walking through a tomato bed. You got like zinnias popping up. I love that. Yeah. Like, I really do love that.
To me, it's like, I like to think of it as like the garden having a say. Like, I like to make my plan, but the garden gets a little say in it, you know? I like to give the garden a say. She's been good to me, so I give her a little room to contribute. I want to try to go a little deeper. So, I want to talk a little bit about your background with food growing. What is your history with gardening? Because I know you kind of got into gardening, and then along the way you kind of got wooed by gardening. And so there was like a 2-phase process of it for you. So can you kind of like share your history in becoming who you are as a gardener that is walking onto this farm, the gardener that's walking on this farm? How'd you get there?
Yeah, so I vividly remember my first garden. I lived in a subdivision not that far from here, actually, about like 10 minutes from here. And I had a David Brown tractor, and I tilled up this little piece of, you know, my backyard, and our neighbors thought I was crazy. Matter of fact, they called the landlord on me, like, to make sure that, like, you could even do this. And I remember not having a clue what to do. I mean, I remember my papa having a garden and working on that garden, but this will be the first time that, like, I'd actually went and bought the seeds and tilled up the ground, and not knowing anything, I sowed everything, like, way too close. I remember growing watermelons that ended up rotting on my countertops because I didn't even eat watermelons. Like, I had this idea of like, wow, I want to grow food. Yeah. But I was still totally disconnected to like food, right? Like, I wasn't buying from the local farmer's market. I wasn't buying organic. I didn't really care about those things. It was just like, oh, this is interesting. And so when I grew that first watermelon, although it did rot on the counter, I felt really stinking accomplished. I'm like, girl, you grew that. And so I took a few years off of gardening. Like, you know, I had done the thing, but then I kind of just fell back into that disconnect. And then we ended up moving to our first home. Nathan and I got married. We bought a home. We had our first garden with garden beds. And I had become totally inspired by what you were doing. It was like every day I'd get on Instagram and
we didn't know each other in person at this point. We had mutual friends from being in the same area,
And so I would look forward to what you posted every single day.
That's so wild. That's pre-YouTube days.
Yeah, pre-YouTube day. Yeah, like when you were just on Instagram every day, like expanding your farm. And it was like every day I'd wake up, Saturday mornings, I'd be folding laundry in my bedroom, just like hanging on to everything you said because I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And I saw how you fell in love with the garden. Like the love the love she has, I know you think you may understand it, but until you've like been around it, the garden totally woos you in a way I've never seen anyone wooed. And so for me, that gave me the liberty, like I can grow food for the sake of being in love with growing food. Like I don't have to do this or do that. Like I can do it for the sake of it makes my heart happy. And so the shift began to happen. I started becoming much more connected with my food. I started changing my diets. I started, you know, getting away from tilling and wanting to do a no-till or a raised bed approach and all these things. And I just started falling in love with this idea of sustainability, community building, and really just like having the liberty with myself to mess up and know that like this is a process. You're going to have to figure it out. I may not know what I'm doing. There's still instances now where I'm like, what were you doing? You know, like sometimes like you've been growing food for years.
Still
like,
doing that.
Yeah,
I still
like
goof
this
up
was
like that.
It was a total rookie mistake, and I'm, you know, feel like I should be past that rookie marker, but I still make those mistakes. But it's just evolved for me on how the garden is a place to grow food, yes. But the garden is what I refer to as my sanctuary. It's a grounding place. It's a place to community build. It's a place to teach others. It's a place to be connected, to steward. And that's really where I have felt the call, is like God is calling me back to the garden to steward what he has given me dominion over. Yeah. And so it's been a total wild shift.
It is.
It is.
That exact, like what you just said, is exactly why it's so wooing to me. Because like for me, it's this realization, like this is so precious. And this is like a love gift to me. And I just think of like when Sweet Maya does things, and like love gifts hold value even to others. Like for instance, like Maya poured his heart into building that greenhouse, and he did things thoughtfully for me out of his love, but look how much value that's given. Now it's now gets to be a gift to you too, and you feel like you feel seen by God from having wanted that and prayed for that, and now it's a gift to you. And however other many people who have like been inspired by that design or been inspired by that space, or who have learned from that space. And I just think about how much like love gifts like multiply. They just multiply in nature. And I just imagine this garden as a love gift that I receive, and in receiving it and feeling so wooed by it, like it multiplies into the hearts of other people. And I just think love multiplies, and the garden is such a beautiful example of that to me. And I am very encouraged by hearing like what you're saying, because I want other people to get to experience that wooing, because it's made my life better.
Oh yeah,
in a huge way. Like some people just don't understand when you start waxing poetic about the garden, and they're like, oh, enough with that, like just teach me how to grow a tomato. And I'm like, I can do that too. But if you're looking for a place to feel found, I can show you that also. And that's what the garden is to me in so many ways. It's just feeling found and loved. And see, it just gets me. Just gets me. Oh gosh. All right, let's do some basic questions. What is your favorite thing to grow in the garden? I know people ask me this question, I'm like, the garden is my favorite thing to grow, but like specifically, what do you find yourself, I'll ask this on 2 levels.
Okay.
Overall, through your history of garden, what has been your favorite thing to grow? What's giving you the most joy? And then also I'll give you an out by saying this year, what's your favorite thing to grow? Because I have different things I get fixated on each year, but it's not necessarily my overall favorite.
So the tromboncino is a love of mine.
Yeah.
That long, dangly, awkward squash, it's just, it has my heart. And it does, because I grow it every year. I can't sell it to save my life. Like, it's just one of those things that I do for me.
Yeah.
And every year I find myself just enamored by my arch trellis just dangling with these long tromboncino. So probably every year up until now, that has been my favorite thing to grow.
Yeah.
This year,
we need to get some of those in the ground here so they're ready for you when you get here. I think that trellis on the front is empty. So
we should do that. We should do that. Okay, that makes me excited. And then this year, obviously the flowers, like, you know, putting the dahlias in, you know, the high tunnel, like, I'm excited to see those. Dabbling into cut flowers this year has really brought me a lot of joy. And it's funny too, because I kind of knew I was going to transition into this a little bit before we knew when we were coming here. But I think that, like, that was the perfect timing too, because it alleviated the stress of me having to be in the garden.
Yeah.
It alleviated the maintenance of pruning the tomatoes and trellising the tomatoes. And I think it just kind of organically flowed that way. And they're beautiful to look at. Like, it just, I go out into my garden and I'm like, my gosh, this is pretty. And so the flowers definitely have got my heart this year.
I've actually been really inspired by listening to all your cut flower plans, and I'm like thinking of dedicated spaces at our new place to do some. I don't know that I'll ever sell them, but I just want to make it rain flowers in everybody's life. Like, I'm like, I would just give them away. I just grow it. I like, it is, it's so exciting. And like the ones that you put back there are just going to be so, they're coming up, and the way these dahlias in there have bloomed, it's been really exciting. Yeah. They're gorgeous. So beyond, again, this is one of those questions that I know, but like, what is your dream beyond right now? Like, I know that this is where you're going to be for the time being. I mean, I know personally they're not going to stay here forever. I know that you guys have bigger dreams than that, and I'm completely okay with that. I've had some people be like, well, what if they sell? Well, it'll be their house, they can sell it. Like, but like, I think it's going to serve you well. I think you're going to serve it well. Yeah. But like, what is your next dream now that this is all being fulfilled? Yeah. Like, what is your big dream?
Wow, that's a lot. So I have learned in this season, because I am a wild dreamer, I share that with you guys. Nathan, on the other hand, he's the realist. Yeah. And so
we do end up married to those. Yeah. We dreamers end up married to anchor people. It's a good thing.
It is. It was so funny though, because Nathan and I were having a conversation the other day, and he was like, you always thought this would happen, right? I'm like, yeah. Like, I never thought that my dreams wouldn't be fulfilled. I didn't know when
or how,
but I knew that they would happen. Yeah. Nathan, he just like, yeah, okay, honey. Like, you know. And so this is my dream coming to life, and I have really just been diligently praying and encouraging Nathan, like, the ability and the freedom, I guess is the right word, to dream. And so what I foresee after this is Nathan stepping into his fulfillment and his dreams, and me rallying around that. For me, I do have huge dreams of writing books, teaching workshops, like allowing people to come to our farm and learn, and I would love to like take that with me in the next season that we're in. We would love to grow in a climate that we've never grown in. Yeah. So that's a dream, is like looking somewhere not in Arkansas. Like, we've both always been here, and so that's kind of a long-term dream, is where we see ourselves, that's going to allow Nathan to step into his dreams a little bit more, but it still allow me to grow and be very community driven and connected in wherever that place is that God lands us.
Yeah. I think that is amazing, and truly, like, we're experiencing much of the same thing. You know, I, for the longest time, dreamed of the small farm and the food on my table being what I grew, and I had this very like home contained dream. But Maya is like, he has larger goals. He really wants to get back into horses and different things like that. That just wasn't ever going to be feasible here. When you have like a, you know, your spouse, have people in your life that really get behind you, it's really sweet to be able to
watch that.
Yeah.
So
that's nice. We're good. Oh, shooky doodle. Okay.
What was that?
That's what my mom said, shooky doodle.
I've never heard of that.
It's made up. It's because she made it. If it's really serious.
Say that without your cheeks moving.
If it's really serious, she throws in Shuki Bo Doodle. But we never cussed as kids. Like, you know, like.
Why would you when you have words like Shuki Doodle?
And Poodle Doot. That was the other one. I look back, I'm like, that is so wholesome. But I will tell you, like, you know, we were never those kids that accidentally let swear words slip in school. Like, it was Shuki Doodle. Still do it. That's So one thing that I think would be a good thing to talk about, we are actually, our things are loading up at the end of this month, moving. We're gonna hang around. I'm actually gonna stay with my dad and hang around to, you know, like clean the house up and get it ready to hand over. And you guys are coming in like the very beginning of August. And I've kind of had this in mind the whole time. So I love the garden in August. I have a special love for the August garden. So for some people that's like the peak of their garden, especially people who live in cooler climates and shorter seasons. But here, there is a point where the garden just becomes untamable.
Yes, that's a good word.
Yeah, like I'm trying to like, I have a tendency to get very poetic over this. I've written like poems about the August garden being so like, you know, untethered, like a lover who, you know will leave. Like, and that's this, the garden in August for me, you're still harvesting a lot. There is no sense in trying to like rein it in.
Yeah.
A lot of things. Yeah, you just let it go. And there's been a little bit of like mixed feedback whenever like I'm throwing all these seeds in willy-nilly and like planting every inch and letting volunteers grow and stuff. And I've had some people be like, I feel like you're leaving a mess, you know?
Yeah.
And as an experienced gardener, the answer is yes. Like, the garden in August is a mess.
Yeah.
That is a true statement. The garden in August is a hot, glorious mess. And right now, like, as I'm sowing all these things, I would like to get your heart for the August garden that you are inheriting, because you are inheriting a wild, food-filled adventure, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, so I have multiple thoughts on that. First of all, sowing the garden wild and letting the volunteers happen, like, that is you. Like, that is your, that is just true to you. You know what I mean? So when you're like, oh, I'm going to let that volunteer grow, like, I just think, oh, that's Jessica.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that is the things that spark joy in your life. So I don't think anything about all the, you know, wildness, because I've come to your garden every August, and whether you were moving or not, it's always been wild, because it's like, oh, I found seeds, or oh, this is pretty, you know what I mean? So like, I don't ever think about that, but people have also asked me that, and one, I know what I'm stepping into. The fact that you are even sowing into this garden is silly. Like, if you look at it from most people's perspective, you have spent hours upon hours sowing things, buying seeds, buying dahlias, buying things, planting that you are never intending on reaping the harvest of. And it's because you care about me. So I know that when I step into this, it may be wild, but it's like you are showing me that you're my friend. Like, this is how you're showing me acts of love and acts of service. And so I never think that I'm walking into this and I'm going to be overwhelmed and that you're leaving me a mess. This is how you show me that you love me. You know? And so that's how I view it, as when I walk into this untamed jungle, I'm going to know that you left really, really caring about me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I'm excited to have the mess, because my garden is also wild in August, and that's part of it. It's the beauty of a season ending and you starting a new chapter, you know, and I think that just represents the seasons that we're both going to be in during that transition. And for me,
it feels so much like an August garden. Like, just, this is such a fruitful, wild, untamed, like, just roll with it and enjoy it and be in awe of it season.
Yeah, and we're in the season of our lives where we're able to step into a garden and just enjoy what it has to offer. There's no pressure. of, you know, having perfect rows and, you know, harvesting fruits to sell. Like, there is no pressure.
Yeah.
There's the freedom of just coming into it and growing food that just moves you. And you are, what you have done, I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm looking all around this pavilion of just beauty and hard work and abundance. And like, I'm just excited to step into that.
Wow. I love that you see it that way. That definitely blesses my heart. I don't quite have words for how all this feels, which I'm not often lost for words, but like I don't really have words for how it all feels, but I really, like, I wanted to do this video because I knew that like one day we're gonna look back at this and be like, this was such a pivotal transition point for so much good and change, and it is hard, but it is also beautiful, and I love that it feels like a gift to you, because it really is, in my heart, it really is a gift. I don't know, like, I imagine just handing over the August garden and all her wild splendor and just watching as that, like, it's gonna pass away. That is going to be this peak fullness, and it's gonna pass away. And then you're gonna have this blank slate, you know. I mean, it's you're gonna be able to come in and just wipe it clean and start, and then it's gonna be like fully yours with, you know, the remnants of what was sown in the last season coming back. But I just think it's gonna be such a beautiful thing.
It is. It's gonna be really cool because you guys will have followed it, you know, on y'all's channel, and then seeing that kind of fold over, it is just kind of this wonderful transition. It's the growing pains that we're both experiencing of like transitioning out of one space and into the other, and I'm excited for these growing pains.
I mean, bittersweet is like so how this feels right now. There is a bitterness to it, but not even really. I don't even think that's the right word. Does somebody have like an alternative word to bittersweet? Like, that's the thing. I meant lost for exactly what I want to say. Like, I would say rather it is a costly investment that I know is worthy. You know, like, I know that the steps that we're making right now are worthy, and like you said, growing pains, and it costs something, but worthy things do. The last question that I always ask people on my interview show is, if you could give one piece of advice to the viewers that are watching this today, what would that piece of advice be?
That piece of advice would be to invest in your dreams. I just think back to years and years ago, writing all my dreams down, writing all my prayers down, and to think if I wasn't truly invested in what I was praying and asking and believing for, there's probably a good chance I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And so if at any point you think your dreams aren't worth pursuing, like, just cast that out, because if you really like lean into it, you know, we talked about this earlier, what we're experiencing, like, God has that for you too. Like, this isn't something that like only we can experience and someone else can't. And I just think back, had I not invested in my dreams and really had the faith to know that someday it was going to happen, I could not be sitting in what's going to be my garden in a few months. You know what I mean? And so that would be my piece of advice, is invest in your dreams, because they matter, and they do, you know?
You know, one of the things that I think is really interesting about all the way that this has played out, and, you know, we're talking about how in the beginning of this conversation, us coming back and saying we want to build this perennial garden, and I know this is going to be valuable to somebody, and like knowing that, and knowing at the time, knowing Nathan and Jill and being friends with them, but not really knowing how those things were going to come together. I think it's probably easy whenever you just get this glimpse of this situation and go, somehow think that this is like an isolated event that happens for people who are not like you. And I mean, like, I'm not trying to pretend like people think that we're like superheroes or anything, but like, if you only knew how very normal the story had been leading up to this, like, if you only knew how, you know, I mean, like, the first time that I remember, so the first time that I met Jill in person and realized, like, we had met each other prior to that, but the first time we met, like, on an intentional friend level, she came over here for a, like, a little meetup years ago before we did YouTube. And we did a little meetup of like homesteading people in the area that we had connected on Instagram. And I remember Charlie sitting at the piano and looking over the window. And that was when the garden was like only a portion built. And I think about that, and I think about just this normal, I mean, like, we were just living very much normal life. We were, you know, we were struggling to pay bills. Just living just a really normal, average life. I guess we were probably still doing lawn care then. Like, there was a lot of things that were just very different. And when I think from then to now, and I think, wow, like, how much has changed here. And we tell people, don't give up on your dreams. Like, we're saying that so boldly, not from some rose-colored glasses place of having experienced something that's exclusive to a few, because I just don't think like that.
Yeah, I don't either.
And there will always be people who will argue and be like, no, that's not possible for everybody. You shouldn't tell people that. But, like, I just don't believe that.
Right. And also, some people aren't dreaming for this, right? Like, I think you and I have the ability to, like, have those large, I call them, like, crazy faith dreams, right? But some people, their dreams are something that may not be this large. You know what I mean?
And it might just be, I got tagged in something this morning where somebody was sharing their dream was to, like, work with children who had gone through abuse, and, like, it doesn't have to be growing food.
Right,
Whatever your dream is, your dream might just be to have a healthy family. Yeah. I always say that. Your dream might be to have a healthy family because you weren't raised in one. That is in many cases just as big a dream as this. And it requires just as much overcoming.
Yeah, it's purposeful.
Yeah. And so I just think about that between that moment of, like, that first trip here and now. I think of the opportunities for separation. We've had conflict. We've actually overcome conflict. There's just been choice. There's been different things along the way. I don't think you get really fruitful relationships without there being some choice to continue through it. But when I look at the way that this is all working out now, and I look at all those tiny little decisions along the way, and I'm just like, wow, that is so intricate and so beautiful, and I'm so thankful for it. And I'm really
don't cry.
I've been, like, holding it back, man. You started talking about my wild garden and being a gift, and I'm like, But I'm really thankful. And I think the fact that this is documented for people, I hope that it's an encouragement to them as well. What a cool thing to have been able to build something beautiful and watch somebody else make it even more beautiful. That's really awesome. I'm glad it's you.
Aww. Man, this is hard.
Yeah, I know. Well, so we announced to YouTube it was the 7-year anniversary of us living here. Jeremiah and I were actually out of town for our wedding anniversary, and we were watching our premiere in a hotel room, and like and the next day I'm driving back and Jill calls me and we just have this total come apart because it was like the reality hit us in that moment, and that was really the first time that it had really hit us. We're like, wow, like we're about to live 700 miles away from each other. And this has all been such a beautiful unfolding over the course of the last several months. Whenever Jill and Nathan came and farm sat for us in October of last year, we had just had the conversation with them like a month before, or maybe it was 2 months before. We had talked to them and we basically said, we're going to put the ball in your court. You know, we could really see you guys be, you know, dealing with this, and we really feel led that if this is something you want, we will, you know, help make that possible, because we could see this, you know, and if you choose it, let us know. And when we had to go out of town that weekend and we needed a farm sitter last minute, Jeremiah called them and they came out, and I was like, well, maybe, you know, like maybe this will let you know for sure. And I think y'all really like secured the decision around that time. And
when it allowed us to come into the space and like kind of envision what we would do.
Yeah, I think without us being here and just like imagining as yours.
Yes. And I think that was a really key moment too, because it really, you know, I remember sitting, it was so funny, I remember sitting in the in the kitchen, Nathan's cooking dinner, I'm cross-legged, bawling mess because we had like hit over 10,000 subscribers. And it was just like this.
It was a big growth weekend for them coming to stay here.
It was a huge growth weekend, and I looked at Nathan and I'm like, this just feels right. And we both just felt like, you know, sometimes you're in a home and it takes you a while before it feels like home. Your home has always felt like home to me.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's huge on someone who has a hard time with transition, is like, it always just felt right.
Yeah.
And that was huge to us. It always felt right to our kids, which was huge, because they've, you know, Charlie's grown up here in your house. And so June has grown up here in your house. Like, you were there when she was born. Like, it's just a huge thing. And we're just really glad that we were given the opportunity to take over what you've started.
Yeah. And they came in, they farm set in October, and that's really when we kind of like cinched it down. And I know we went in November and we visited Natalie out in California, and at that point it was like the deal was made and like we were moving forward. And then we did our course, and we developed our course, which took a lot of time together. Over the course of a couple of months, we spent a lot of time together filming that course and doing the podcast and working everything out. And then it was like, then we're moving into the transition of the moving and all the different stuff, and we announced it, and then it was just like, oh wow, oh my gosh, like, and it's not to say it didn't occur to us. It was just when you're doing what you know you're supposed to do, like sometimes the reality of it hits you a little delayed, and like the reality of that and what all of this means for our friendship was like and it was pretty rough. Like that was
it hit hard. I remember calling you, and I'd spent the whole night before. Nathan was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." Like, I would just wake up, and he would wake up to me crying. And even now, like, those are those things you try to push in the back of your brain, is because it's like, you know, you talked about our friend Natalie. Natalie and I have always been long distance friends, but like, I mean, especially, of course, like I was over here several times a week. Like, we talk every single day. We come over here, you know, all the time. And the realization of like, there's no just getting in my car and like a quick 45 minutes to your house, you know, that's hard. Like, it's hard. It's
among the costs, you know, when I talk about it being like a costly thing, and like, I don't even say, you know, that is bittersweet. I mean, it's costly. And I know that we'll manage, we'll find a new groove and a new way of doing things, and thankfully there's technology and staying connected. But that is hard. But and there's no like bright side. I don't have like a conclusion. But no, that sucks. I'm gonna miss you, dude. That is really hard. But again, costly. And I think that overall, I can so see the providence in all of it. And I can so see the rightness of it, like you said, that it feels right. That I know that this is what's right. I know it in my knower. But this is one of the things that's hard. Kind of hate to leave it on a downer note. I hope like everybody's like, oh, sad. Trying to think of like one last good question. Oh, how do you feel about roses?
Well, I need a few books.
We were talking about it the other day, and Jill's like, I've never had roses, and I was like, well, you bound to.
They are really pretty. I will try to keep them alive.
I'm gonna take some cuttings, so if they don't do well, we'll be able to bring them back. Thank you so much for being on my interview show.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Again, the information's down below. I really do mean it when I say that one of the benefits of our you know, the legacy of this farm moving over, and no, it won't be Roots and Refuge Farm anymore. It's going to be Whispering Willow Farm. And the fact that this is becoming Whispering Willow Farm as we hand it over, one of the benefits of that to me is that you guys, and the investment in your heart that you've made here, you'll be able to cheer it on, and you'll be able to still see what happens. And I think that's so valuable. So thank you guys. We bless you. Until next time.